What happens when we create machines that are as or more intelligent than we are? What are the possible timelines, implications, and ways forward to ensure we create the most positive future for our world? This is the AGI show, and I'm your host, Soroush Paul. Jamie Bernardi is our guest today. Jamie is the co-founder and AI safety lead at BlueDot Impact. For those who don't know BlueDot Impact runs courses on AI safety. And when they say AI safety, they're really talking about with a focus on AGI, alignment and governance of these much more advanced systems that approach or exceed human capabilities. And they run these incredible courses in collaboration with some of the top minds in the field, people like Richard Ngo at OpenAI, people like Professor David Kreuger over at Cambridge. These courses have been a huge conduit or huge way for people to enter the field and enter the world of AI safety. And I've taken their 101 course myself, their AGI Safety Fundamentals 101 course, and it was an incredible course. I found a reading group of really passionate people, and there's reading groups all over the world, and it was an incredible way to much more deeply understand the field, the research, kind of the ways people are thinking about both the opportunities and challenges that come with these much more intelligent systems. So, as the co-founder and AI safety lead, it's really, really awesome to have Jamie on our show today. Great to have you, Jamie. And we're hoping that Jamie can tell us a little bit more about the work that BlueDot Impact does around initiatives for people to learn about AI safety, walk through us a little bit more the broader field itself, and also give, probably the first time on the series, more concrete ways for people listening to start to contribute to this field of AI safety. And we'll give people a variety of ways to get involved, regardless of their exact background or readiness. So, welcome, Jamie. It's really good to have you on the show.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So, maybe we'll start off with just I'd love to just hear a little bit about you and your story. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you got involved in AI safety and what you're up to now.
Great. Yeah. I got interested in the problem of AI safety about 6 years ago when I was studying physics at university. I suppose I got into it because I met other people who had heard about the problem, knew about the problem. And back then it was way more speculative because we didn't have these concrete systems that we're looking at now. But, projecting forward AI progress and knowing that there were these open problems with machine learning, it seemed like there could be a problem here. So it seemed like a really worthy thing to start exploring, at least at the beginning of my career. And I'm still here. So I think that worked out. Yeah, back then, because I was studying physics, good at maths and things, and the field was pretty new, and it's just like a lot of technical work to do. I thought I was going to go and do a PhD, study machine learning, and maybe work on like some of the technical problems. But I can tell you about what I'm doing now instead.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about that journey. 2017 was a really different time. So maybe tell us a little bit about how the field has evolved and then how your work in the field has evolved as well.
Yeah, sure. I guess the biggest problem I had in 2017, which relates to what I'm doing now, is there were a few papers coming out by people working on this a bit. I think there were no particular like academic groups that were thinking about like the future of AI and even potentially AGI and what sorts of problems that could cause, or like alignment problems, which we can talk about later.
It's crazy. It's just crazy to imagine, now there's, at least, half a dozen, labs around the world thinking about this and obviously way more researchers than that. So it's just crazy to imagine that there were almost none back then. And then
Exactly.
6 years ago is not that long of a time.
Yeah, it's gone real fast. I guess the Center for Human Compatible AI felt like a really real driver in terms of like academics doing this work. That's still around, and I think that was founded in around 2014 or something. You can check that, but
Yeah, that's for those listening. That's over at Berkeley, and it's the lab. I believe Stuart Russell and others are involved in that. Not a lab, a center really.
Exactly. And I suppose a lot of their PhD students are finishing now, so it's kind of like one cycle of
And
people like
that
having
talent of people
started.
coming in. Yeah,
Exactly. And they're now like becoming leaders. They're not the only leaders. There are lots of labs headed by people who didn't study at
sure.
CHI, as it's abbreviated to. But
But you're right,
yeah,
like
I guess
Far AI, Dan Hendricks, like Center for AI Safety, yeah, Fund for Alignment Research. These kind of like organizations, I think, all came out of Stuart Russell's lab and were probably associated with the Center for Human Compatible AI Chai.
wanting to learn about it. As I say, there was like a drip feed of papers coming out which we could read, but it was quite hard to place if you were new to the field, like what the kind of theory of change was behind the paper, or like why they thought that paper might lead to us having an even more advanced system that was aligned, quote unquote. And the going advice at the time to like learn about this field was to either go to this website called the Alignment Forum, still around, and like read everything on it because it was small. But I think it was starting to get to the point where that was not quite possible, and I didn't know how to curate that thing
Wow.
without,
Wow.
yeah, exactly, or talk to people, and that was the other thing. But and that kind of worked. I guess that's how I learned, is talking to
Sure.
people.
It's, every field starts somewhere, but still, that sounds like a incredibly difficult and inaccessible and circuitous way to learn this stuff.
Exactly. I think, and inefficient too, I suppose, for the
Yes,
people who were experts to be talking to beginners all the time. It worked well, but doesn't scale, I
that's
guess.
true. That's
And
true. It's not great for the experts either.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, a mix of this. Let's see, maybe like to fill in a few more details.
Mm.
After I graduated, I became a machine learning engineer because I was quite new to machine learning, wasn't ready to start a PhD straight after graduation. And during that time, I was still based in Cambridge, UK, where I studied, and was running like a small reading group on AI safety that maybe like between 5 and 15 people came to every week, which was quite nice. But around that time as well, so we're now talking about 2020, 2021, whilst I was working, I met my now co-founder, Dewi Owan, who spotted there was like people coming to this group and they didn't really know things about AI safety, and some people at the group like had been reading stuff for a while and had figured out the field, and there was like a large gap between these newcomers and like the people who had been around for a couple of years. So this is when Dewi like put together some sort of onboarding course with Richard Ngo, as you mentioned. So I mean, his PhD was trying to really dig into what this alignment problem was, because I think something we'll probably talk
Mm.
about is there's no like single definition. It's quite fluffy,
Right.
which is like quite dissatisfying to many researchers, I'm sure. But yeah, this sort of came together. Dewi's spot that it wasn't very easy to like join our reading group, and Richard trying to define what the alignment problem was led to them putting together this curriculum, which now forms the backbone of our what we call our AI Safety Fundamentals courses. Back then was the AGI Safety Fundamentals course. I guess we made that name change because AI today has come to mean the sorts of things we were thinking about, and given how like advanced these systems have become. But we can
Right.
talk about
Like you
that.
can already use present day AI to do a lot of this research and work. You don't need to wait for something much more advanced to just get started.
Yeah, exactly. And I think AGI always had this mysticism about it, which I think
Mm.
was right at the time, because people hadn't really heard of AI safety, or if they had other conceptions about what it meant. Um, and putting the G in there really like helped differentiate the course to say, no, we're going to be thinking about like future problems. Yeah, just to like really let people know what to expect. But I
And
think now,
this bigger field of AI safety is just so much bigger than the stuff that we're talking about. I mean, I think what we're talking about is already very big, like aligning future advanced systems or current and future advanced systems with human values. But there's obviously, if you if you Google the word AI safety, you get bias, you get, credit decisioning, and you get, all kinds of more things that have been around for decades, issues that have been around for decades with decision making systems. So it becomes a much bigger field. but it also, maybe some of that stuff is relevant for us too.
Yeah, I think lots of things feed into what we would want AI to be. I do think when you Google AI safety, you would mostly get the sorts of things we work on, for better or for worse. I think I don't have like a clear answer about how this should be.
I'm actually so curious that I'm just typing in AI safety right
Yeah.
now. I'm just looking at the first 10. Actually, the first one is Wikipedia, and I won't click and try and read all the Wikipedia. But the first few results are preventing an AI-related catastrophe from 80,000 hours, so quite relevant. Then it's from Center for AI Safety. Then, at least for me, sitting in Australia, it's the Australian Human Rights Commission, which that would be the much broader version. But actually, guess what's next? The very next result is AI Safety Fundamentals from
Oh,
BlueDot
wow.
Impact. So that's quite some serious search ranking that you've got, and well deserved based on how good quality of a resource this is. From speaking from experience.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess I see this as testament to the kind of ecosystem we emerged from that was very disparate, and I don't want to say decentralized. That assumes there were lots of other orgs too. There was just no real central place where you could go to learn about this, and people Googling it, yeah, maybe found the Wikipedia article, maybe found 80,000 hours, but yeah, we've really tried to be a place people can go to Google this for the first time and like go from not knowing many things, but having enough curiosity to have Googled it, to yeah, understanding the lay of the field and what people are doing.
Absolutely. And honestly, there's so many positive things I could say about this course, so I won't, drag on for too long, but a few things that I'd love to kind of share with the audience. One, it really does start from the very basics. And by very basics, I mean like, is this even a problem? Is AI safety and like more advanced systems and the challenges of that real, and what's the evidence for that? Then it starts to dig into both the theory but also the empirical work, which is quite different. I think there's kind of books and things out there that are very conceptual and theoretical, but don't really get into the more concrete evidence or the empirical work done. And I think AGI Safety Fundamentals does a really good job of touching core assumptions, empirical work, and theoretical underpinnings and work. So I think it does a really good job of covering a lot of the top quality thinking in the field.
Thank you. I remember you asked earlier, how has the field changed? And you've just mentioned empirical work, and I think this is a great treat for us because, again, back in 2017, or even when we were starting this course in 2020, late 2020, early 2021, there was just very little empirical work to draw on. And I think
Right.
this was a massive problem for the sorts of people who are interested in machine learning for machine learning's sake. The way that field works is you have an idea and you test it. Like a meme is no one really believes anything until they've seen the experiment. Like intuitions and ideas sound compelling, but it's not believed until someone's run the test. So I think it's been really helpful. Well, now that it's happened, now that these like large language models exist, and we have something close to like a working model for a general generative system, this has been a real treat for alignment researchers trying to run experiments about the sorts of things it will do, like testing out these ideas for real. And yeah, we try and put that in as quickly as it comes out into the course.
You've obviously put out these great courses online, and there's regular reading groups, and I'll definitely put it in the show links so people can check it out and join. But I'd also love to hear what you're thinking about next. So what are you working on now and going forward?
Yeah, definitely. We've talked a lot about technical alignment just so far, but right now there is a course running called the AI governance course. Again, still with this focus on advanced general and generative systems, or sometimes called frontier AI systems as well. Seems to be a name that's working well.
Hmm.
So the main thing I've been working on for the last 6 months is revamping that course, because again, we started it in 2021. A lot has changed significantly. Like government interest has changed the strategic landscape as well. So yeah, we've been updating that to put the most recent materials into it, tell the most accurate story about what governments are considering when deciding what standards, regulations, or international relations to pursue around AI. And so, yeah, some of my time is spent just monitoring that course to make sure everything went as expected and like tweak it based on feedback for people going through that course. But looking forward, yeah, we're thinking about like running more specialized courses. I think there are groups of like professionals very interested in this problem, and I think there's like very like small targeted courses we could run for those people, be it ML engineers or people working on the governance side. And yeah, I think we're well positioned to like adapt our content to make it more specific to particular groups. But otherwise, we'll just be continuing to run these. In addition, not otherwise, but in addition, we'll be continuing to run these open courses. So early next year is the plan to revamp and re-release the AI alignment course. I mentioned
Oh,
like
really?
stuff is coming out.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, I hope so.
It was already. I
Um,
mean, when I went through it, it was still quite up to date, and I think it'd been recently updated. So you guys are putting in a lot of work to keep this really updated, which is obviously great for both students wanting the latest, but also in a very fast moving field.
yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, there's multiple pressures here. One is just, of course, to make like the next generation of researchers as efficiently as we can. That they need to know what's going on now, and like because as you say, the field is so fast paced. Like old ideas are being thrown out fast. We've already thrown out like a couple of modules, or at least relegated them to kind of further resources. We don't not trying to like rewrite history, but just keep it as relevant as possible. Um, and I suppose the other pressure is for BlueDot Impact as a company or charity, however you want to frame it, to stay relevant and useful to people. I think gaining a reputation for being out of date is a classic way that educational
That's
organizations
true.
can fail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Listen up, all the universities in the world ever making a course and teaching me stuff that is
yeah.
nobody actually uses anymore.
I think that's interesting you raise universities. Another reason we founded this course is there are very few universities that can or do teach anything like this, and maybe because it's not as concrete as other fields, as I mentioned. I think Stanford have a kind of optional course on this. I think they also worked with Richard to define the curriculum, so it might be
Hmm.
relatively similar. Um, that may be wrong actually for anyone listening. But yeah, it's similar content is what I can say. And I think there's another like small master's module at Cambridge now that David Kreuger has been working on. I'm unsure if it's actually run, but I've definitely encountered this as an idea. So yeah, there's only two. Oh, I guess UC Berkeley have always had one, but I think that ran every other year, like the one that's due Russell ran
Wow.
every other year.
Shows what the level of demand must be. Not very
Yeah,
high.
yeah.
Or
I'm sure its
demand or
demand is increasing.
support or
Yeah,
something.
certainly supply of professors who will or can teach it, and probably a content problem too for like concrete things to even teach. I think is reasonable to say. There's not. It's been quite a conceptual field. This might be changing, but if you're studying like a hard machine learning degree, it hasn't historically fit in very neatly. But anyway,
Right.
this is all
Right.
to say, yeah, this is a good reason we exist. It'd be strange to form the physics fundamentals course because you can pick almost any university in the world and get a great onboarding into physics,
Right.
but
Those resources
this just
already
doesn't
exist.
exist.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, fantastic. And I think we actually got into a lot deeper into some of the things that we're hoping to chat about. So that's fantastic. So yeah, for those listening, Blue Dot Impact has courses not only on the technical side of things, but also on the governance side of things. So how will governments and other organizations around the world look to police and coordinate the response to artificial general intelligence and just more generally advanced AI systems. And I think oftentimes it becomes quite separate from the technical side, but actually if you look at it, it is much more technical than you think. And I would definitely encourage people who have any interest in policy or just like other forms, other ways of doing good work in this field to explore the governance side, even if they're coming from a technical background, because the interplay between the two is really strong, which I'm sure is that why Blue Dot Impact has kind of gone that direction as well. Like it's just an incredibly important part of the solution.
AI governance, yeah, I think very important. And I guess my own opinions have shifted on this significantly over time. I think we've seen governments really step up in the last year. I think possibly down to my own naivety, I didn't expect it to be quite as the response to be quite as strong as it has been so soon, which is really encouraging. So I think the field has historically been behind on this, and yeah, we're in the process of catching up, which will require lots of talented people to come and check it out. So I agree.
Jamie, I'd love to go back and just say, you've studied this stuff quite closely. Obviously, you have been a machine learning engineer yourself. Do you believe that someday we'll develop these advanced AI systems that start to kind of match and exceed human capabilities in many domains that we often call AGI? And do you have any thoughts on what that system might look like, what that future might look like?
Mm. The big questions.
Just a big question. Just your quick 2 minute summary of that one.
Perhaps I should have known coming onto the AGI show. That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I don't think I would need to believe that it's even more than 50% likely that we would achieve something like AGI for it to feel important working on this. So I guess I operate on the assumption that there will be some kind of technology like this, or will at least be capable of producing some kind of technology like this, and then figure out what that would mean. I suppose, yeah, I also don't think the chances are diminishingly small, and I think this reasoning was kind of what I used going into it in 2017 when we were much more unsure about how AI would develop, or I was much more unsure, perhaps others were more sure. I think then I was thinking on timelines of around if this came to fruition within 50 years, it would be important to get started now. So I think this could be so big, and we are like so underprepared. I guess in that time, it turned out we were underprepared for other things too, like pandemics, and I think we're still underprepared for climate change. So I expected this could fall into another category of huge problems we're underprepared for, and I was okay doing the kind of neglected, strange thing at that time.
Well, the pandemic's a good analogy to kind of bring to, because I mean, we were underprepared, and yet, thank God for all the people who were working on this stuff just quietly in the background for not just years, but decades. Things like mRNA vaccines, like cold chain logistics, controls, research on masks and the transmission of viruses and coronaviruses. Like this stuff had been, all the people that responded to the earlier SARS outbreaks in various parts of the world. It was thanks to those people that we had any response, and of course the all important vaccine. That it wasn't 10 times worse than it actually was. So I think we are underprepared, but to the extent that we can be prepared, it's because of the hard work of all these people who may not be celebrated until things get really bad. So yeah, it's a reminder of working on these important long-term initiatives.
Yeah, very true. I'm sure there'll be many unsung heroes coming to the forefront again in other domains as well.
Absolutely.
I guess one difference here, I mean, not to downplay the story you've told, but there have been pandemics before, and this seems like more of a problem of institutional, even like population level forgetting. The last like particularly bad one was 100 years ago, and after that, there's been many epidemics that happen in non-Western countries typically, and so I suppose it's like been an ongoing problem, which is probably very helpful for like developing the knowledge and expertise as well. And in the AI, just to like point out one disanalogy is we're trying to anticipate this ahead of time before even before the first, possibly not before the first disease, but the first disease with an R value greater
Right.
than 1 or something like that.
Serious epidemic equivalent of AI catastrophe. Yeah, it's true. We're working off
Yeah.
less in many ways. For most of our listeners and for both of us, we're here for a reason because we think this is possible and important. So, okay, you think it's possible. Do you have any thoughts on what it might look like? And you can kind of talk about it in different time periods potentially. But yeah, any thoughts on how it might look?
Yeah, certainly. I guess I'll finish off on where I was at in 2017 is we didn't have any real concrete system. This was just before transformers were released or invented, which is a reminder of how quickly the field goes. That was only 5 years ago. And I guess then I had to call upon sort of the human brain as an existence proof that any machine could exist that could do all the things that humans do.
Right.
And I suppose being secular in my outlook, it didn't feel like the brain was particularly special. It just went through a particular training process that we didn't know how to reproduce for sure, but it seems plausible that
Right.
we
It's a
could
proof
figure
of
it out.
concept.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, I guess when we talk about AGI, again, just to call the definition into question, I think there is no single definition of artificial general intelligence. A lot of people think it's falls into the category of you'll know it when you see it, which I think is about right. It's something that can do the things humans can do, but I guess we've also invented machines that solve problems that humans can't do, like calculators. And wouldn't describe these as intelligent, but
Right.
tools that augment our capability. I don't know. Yeah, this is all to say I'm leading it up to what I'm about to say, which is I think now that we do have these transformer models and large language models that are scaling, this is perhaps sparks of something that could be quite significant if it continued to develop at the pace it's been developing. So the things I'm seeing are there's just the massive progress from the release of the transformer, I think in around 2018, to GPT-4 in 2022, and all the other large language models, which seem capable of passing what we thought was the Turing test of sitting on the other side of a computer screen and convincing a human that it is a human. I think maybe this has been done, but seems plausible to me that we're there. I think that was inconceivable.
Yeah,
to have happened at this time.
we talked about the Turing test for pretty much at least our whole lifetimes. We talked about it as something special, and now I would argue that we've blown past it, and people have now already said, "Oh no, it doesn't mean much," or it's actually not. Well, different people are saying different things, but some people are saying, "Oh, it's actually not really all that intelligent anyway. It wasn't that special of a test." But yeah, it's been a very rapid progress in the last decade.
Yeah, certainly. And other things I'm seeing happening next, which, if I think about the difference between ChatGPT and a human, of course, modality is important. So can it interpret text and images and videos? People are experimenting with that. There's early progress. I don't see any reason that won't continue to scale. We have scaling laws, which show us that, predictably, as you throw more data parameters and compute at a problem, or like a machine learning training run, it will predictably get more capable. So I think that squashed one question we had: is will these systems continue to scale? It's looks like it. I guess maybe there'll be some curtailing that we can't predict empirically, given it's outside of the distribution, but maybe we should operate on the assumption that the trend might continue. So I think, now that we do have these large language models, I'm really gripping them and using that as the framework to think about what will these systems look like in 10 years. And again, I don't need to think about artificial general intelligence now. I think that still has some mysticism. Some people think this term was invented by labs like DeepMind and OpenAI as a way of marketing themselves as we're going to create something magic and you should give us lots of VC ventures. So I guess I tend to avoid that term now because I just don't think it's necessary to look at the systems we do have and what they will be capable of.
It's
You know,
interesting. It's interesting you talk about the definitional problem because we just wrapped up recently a whole series on timelines and like pathways to something resembling artificial general intelligence as defined kind of roughly by the Nick Bostrom definition of, can do essentially all of the tasks, the economically important tasks that a human can. And having reflected on that myself, I'm actually probably going to record a little addendum to that series because I actually think, yeah, we got quite, in many ways, even though the conversations were useful, we got led quite astray by thinking about AGI in that specific trying to come up with a specific definition and then think about it. Because, for example, you know, there's probably a bunch of tasks that humans are going to be better than AI at, maybe for a very long time or maybe forever. Like maybe we're just really, really good at, the moving through, bipedally sensory through the world, and like maybe bipedal robots are going to be really hard, or maybe we're really good at mapping our environment in a particular way, and like for one reason or another that becomes hard. But none of those things actually matter if we produce much more advanced AI systems that still dramatically change the world. If we produce things that hugely change our world, even if they're not strictly AGI by some narrow definition, the thing we're here on this show to kind of talk about is not does it look like a human or does it think like a human. We're here to talk about, as this accelerating progress of AI happens, how are we all affected by it? So yeah, so I definitely can empathize with your thoughts about not getting too caught up in the definitions.
yeah, I think that definition as you read it sounded sensible to me, like capable at, or I think it was something like capable at all the tasks a human can do. And I think by the nature of how these large language models are trained, like with the data on the internet, I think I'm mostly thinking about models that can do all the things, or most of the things that humans can do while sat at a computer. And I think this
Right,
is like a
right.
lot
That's
of
an
what our
interesting like narrowing that still gives us. Yeah, and you're right. I think a lot of people in the field talk about it more in that way. It's like a cognitive or information general intelligence rather than being worried about the physical world as much.
exactly. And I guess touching on your point of, humans are better at some things. I think like AI models will be better at some things too. Like they
Right.
don't get tired. They can work all the time. They can churn through like pages and pages of text in seconds to find the relevant parts. They can personalize a response much faster. So in the same way, calculators augment humans. I think these models will augment humans too, and already do in lots of ways. And yeah, in terms of what capabilities this unlocks for individuals and for the models themselves, this will be important. Yeah, it will raise new challenges for humans trying to exist in the world.
How is the research community? How is the governance community? And maybe the business community as well, responding to these much more advanced AI systems and what may be coming next. How would you describe the lay of the land?
Yeah, yeah. I guess again, just to flag, I won't labor it, but this has shifted dramatically in the last year. I think by
Absolutely.
my own observation, this would be with the release of ChatGPT, kind of these systems making contact with people for the first time. People have, well, with most people for the first time, realizing what these systems are capable of and in what ways it's helpful to them, which you can see just based on like ChatGPT's subscription rates.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think this has caused a big shift. But yes, I'm happy to talk about that. Um, yeah, I guess I'll break this down roughly into the categories you mentioned. So, like people working on AI governance, people working on technical AI systems, um, and the business community. So maybe I'll start with the business community because I suppose this sets the kind of strategic landscape in the context
Well,
that is important.
they've been a little bit important in this whole thing, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, I guess there's multiple ways. One is just this. I've been talking about like risks and concerns with advanced AI systems, but business leaders, not necessarily leaders of AI companies, are obviously seeing this technology and imagining all the things it could do for them. And on like the metrics they care about, like operational efficiency, this could be fairly revolutionary. I think this isn't. I mean, this points at another challenge, but things like call center staff, this could just be massively revolutionized with advanced chatbots that are either fine-tuned on your company's data or just have access to it in the context window or something. I imagine could go a long way. And I think that this is just one case study of how business leaders are eyeing up this technology and really want it. I would imagine. I think right now they don't necessarily trust it because of these like safety issues we've mentioned, and OpenAI not having garnered like much reputation yet, perhaps outside of the AI community. Two, don't understand how to do it, but I think all this will change within a few years. We'll see people figuring out how to apply these like raw base models like GPT-4 and use the API to package it into either apps that people can pick up and use, or directly apply it within their own systems by building like software systems
Yep.
themselves.
Yep. So all these like business CEOs are very excited to apply the technology. So that's a very big trend all over the world at the moment.
And I think this like really defines the incentive landscape in AI, because as much as one can be concerned about it, there's huge pressure for continued technological innovation, both from like capitalism in general, but also, I guess, outcomes for humans, individual humans, particularly in like the medical domain. We could like also increase the operational efficiency of hospitals and discover new drugs. I think drug discovery is a tough one because a lot of the systems being used for that I don't see as being the same as like AGI, as we would say, quote
Sure.
unquote. So
Sure.
there are like multiple different ways you can develop advanced AI, and more
Right.
narrow systems doing specific tasks seem much safer in the framework that I'm talking about here. So I think governments, to like segue into governments, see this and obviously want this for their citizens and want this for their economic outcomes as well. And that is one side of the story. On the other side, they have heard and acknowledged the risks, which is very encouraging.
Right.
I think some of the open letters from Centre for AI Safety and Future of Life Institute went a long way to defining this, and the many AI experts and field leaders that signed these letters really helped define the narrative here. There's two sides, and trying to navigate the narrow valley in between is what I see governments doing.
Yep.
I think this looks like massive impetus for standards and regulations, which I think is very encouraging. We've seen the UK AI Task Force and the AI Safety Summit coming up. Not just the AI Summit, but the AI Safety Summit, which caught me by surprise.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to see how the UK has brought a big focus on safety and really brought both money and focus onto that. And I think that probably stems from just the fact that the UK has actually been a bit of a hub and a leader for this for a long time at Oxford and at Cambridge and others in that field. So it's great to see from the UK government.
Yeah, I think this is true. I think whilst we're still uncertain about exactly what will come from it, I think it's probably the best possible world that they're trying. And really good landscape to like try and pick up all this kind of research that's been done by these small organizations. Like, I don't know as much about the governance field, but there's been some proposals out there.
Yeah, there's
That
there's definitely
people,
great proposals, and just for maybe our audience, like concrete examples of this are things like having mandatory review and audit before we deploy the next largest model, or having better monitoring of where all the world's GPUs and therefore compute and therefore who's actually using these models and for what, being able to govern compute itself. So there's a bunch of these proposals, all of which are at an early stage, but which give us concrete ways to think about the opportunities and risks and kind of manage those.
exactly. So I think the thing I was gesturing to is some, I don't know what to call them, but organizations like the Center for the Governance of AI and some academics um, have been like writing these high level proposals. I think they themselves would describe them as high level, and now they're meeting reality.
Yep.
So policymakers are looking at them, speaking to the people that have been thinking about this for years, which is very encouraging. But there's just a huge pile of policy implementation work to do to find out what's going to be practicable, in practice, and find out which things are not going to work, and just kind of trying to meet policy to that kind of more high level research that's been done is what governments are mostly responding to now. I think this comes out in like looking at discourse around the invite list for the AI Safety Summit. We don't know who to invite yet, and there have been multiple proposals for um, what international agreements about AI could look like, and these are being drawn upon. But in practice, there's a political decision to make about who to invite to that summit, and I think there'll just be lots of questions like this of reality being met in the governance world.
Yeah.
I suppose one final thing to say about the way governments are responding, I think is really encouraging, and this is, I don't think I would change things, but one flip side is, of course, there's like a military opportunity with advanced technology too. And so, whilst there are benefits to governments or like the state noticing the power of these systems, I want some camps might say there are drawbacks too. So it arms the world much more readily, or gives the world advanced arms technology as well,
Yep.
which will change the strategic balance
Yeah,
there.
we probably won't dig into that here because that could honestly
Yeah.
be easily a whole episode. But both the weapons usage of these systems, the geopolitical implications of these systems, and how governments are thinking about safety, but also thinking about the competitive aspects of these systems, like against different foreign adversaries, is definitely a big part of the thinking. For what it's worth, it does feel like there's a lot more focus on maybe safety and responsible deployment than I would have expected, given that there's, of course, everyone knows that countries can get competitive and militaries do care about more advanced weapons. So the relative balance feels good so far, and I think it's going to be the work now to keep it that way.
I think this is true. I think, I'm going to give one case study just to not leave our listeners with too much of a rosy picture here. I think
Yeah.
probably governments and the policymakers are sitting in different buildings and maybe have different outlooks on this. And I don't know, it's only a tweet, and I don't want to draw too much evidence from this, but seeing like military leaders boasting about what autonomous weapons are going to do for their military looks quite different to the people I see much more often on a day-to-day basis, the policymakers who are really trying to deploy responsibly. And there could be another reality to be met between national security and kind of the more domestic and business or commercial industry. So
100%.
we'll see how that goes.
100%. Yeah, no, that story is far from written, and I could provide more case studies of a similar kind. So, yeah, definitely not something to take lightly or consider that we're in a good place there. But maybe
Yeah.
just for the sake of continuing to get that lay of the land, do you want to tell us a little bit about the technical research landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll go chronologically again here. What did it look like before all of this hype, let's say, caused by 2022's models, there was a couple of technical labs, like I think Chai had been a long-standing player, and some early progress in Cambridge, and maybe a couple in Canada as well. And this was very small. I think another important player we've not mentioned yet is this, what I'll refer to as scaling labs. So here
I was going to
basically
say
mean,
if you didn't mention, I was like, we were missing one big part of the ecosystem. But
yeah,
yes,
yeah. So far, it's been DeepMind and OpenAI, the major scaling labs I could think of. I think more recently, you would add Anthropic to that, and I think probably this is proliferating much faster. I think these are the three that I would see as furthest ahead. Maybe Inflection AI.
I was going to say
Like
there's definitely at
instantly.
least a few more that are up there. So those
Yeah.
three are definitely the biggest. But Meta AI is clearly not too far behind.
Mm.
Microsoft Research does some relevant work in this field. Google Brain, which is now part of DeepMind, so I guess those two have been merged. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Inflection. So there's a few more. But yeah, I think you're right that DeepMind, OpenAI, and Anthropic are the three most prominent players.
Exactly. And just to draw a final connection for anyone that wasn't aware, Microsoft own a chunk of OpenAI, and I think they're working closely to integrate OpenAI's products into Microsoft products too.
Yep.
So yeah, this is to say that even before 2022, DeepMind and OpenAI have cared about and have been thinking about safety. There would be multiple voices saying how much or like how genuine this is. I think it's been genuine, but there are obviously commercial incentives trading off against how much safety work one can do. And they have had safety teams ever since their conception, and I think a lot of the safety literature that we've seen have come from them, but it's not been a lot because these teams, as I understand it, have been I think less than 20 people per org, probably more around the 10 mark for years. So there's not been a high output, but also there has been very important output. I'm thinking of reinforcement learning from human feedback was an idea conceived of by maybe not conceived of, I think it's fairly simple conception to think of reinforcement learning and then think of putting human feedback in it. But early experiments were done with that by OpenAI around the 2015 mark. And obviously this is now like the main mechanism we have for aligning these large language models for better or for worse. So there's always been interest in safety from those labs, and some of those methods have come to fruition as well. To move to thinking about one final player, I suppose, is like a couple of usually not-for-profit research organizations. I think you've already mentioned FAR Labs, which I think used to stand for, I'm not sure it still stands for, the
Right, it
Fund
might
for
be one of
Alignment
those old
Research.
acronyms.
Yeah, but now it sounds good to just FAR AI, so let's call it that.
Yeah.
And Redwood Research, I've been doing some papers which try to get at the very core safety problem. The Alignment Research Center, again, all these orgs have been quite small and have contributed some things, but I don't want to give the impression that this is in hand and these orgs are very far ahead on anything.
Right.
I think,
and there's definitely a scale and funding gap. I think all of these orgs are doing great work, and even the safety teams within these big scaling labs are doing great work. But just as a point of example, like OpenAI, is about 1,000 employees, and I would be surprised if they had more than 50 max. I would be shocked if it's more than 50, at most 100 safety people who like deeply think about safety as their main focus. So the other thing to probably maybe call out in this lay of the land is also that there's a huge amount of money and attention and research and work that goes into advancing the capabilities and the abilities of these AI to do things and impact the world, and a much smaller portion, a fraction of a few percent, a few percentage points going towards safety, at least in the same types of safety that we're talking about.
yeah, absolutely. I guess a couple things to say to that to start to like move into how the world is responding now. It would be rude not to mention OpenAI's super alignment effort.
Yep.
So this is one major response to the uptick in interest in safety, where they founded this new team called the super alignment team. This has been hiring, so it's plausible that it could be growing larger than 50 people. I'm not really sure how big it started with about 10 people, but I know they have been talking a lot about hiring, so it might be growing. But I think the major thing we can point to and measure is that OpenAI have committed 20% of all of its past and I believe future compute to be dedicated to the super alignment team to run alignment experiments, and their major idea is to use AI to align AI. So they're going to try and train a sort of alignment researcher. And I think the details have been vague so far, but I think the key things we can point to is the commitment of resources to this problem, commitment of personnel to this problem. I'm excited to see what they come up with. I'm excited to see there's a dedicated effort. I guess another key thing is I think he's the CTO, the Ilya. I
Ilya
forget
is
his
the chief.
surname.
Ilya Susk. It's always struggle with the last name, but Susketeva, I think, is close to it, and he's the chief scientist of OpenAI.
Great. Yeah, he's going to be co-leading that effort. So I think it's a good nod in the direction of this is not so much anymore. I guess the fear with safety teams has always been that it's been like a tack on, a nod in the direction of safety and ethics, and some methods get picked up, but most of it doesn't have some sway over the rest of the org. I think putting someone in that position in charge of the team or like co-leading the team is a good signal. And I think this is probably, I hope will, I don't think we have much evidence of it, will signal like a wider move in industry too. I think, as you've said, there's like a massive gap between the scale of capabilities work and the scale of safety work. Possibly that's a funding gap, but I just don't think it's very easy to just say, let's put more money into
Yeah,
safety
not
work.
just funding,
It's
is it?
like, where, what? Yeah, like
And who?
I think a
Like
lot of it,
the
and who.
talent and the focus and the research depth is just very different.
Yeah, exactly. I think funding isn't the only reason these orgs haven't grown. It's just a very hard problem to carve up and create missions and visions around. Um, so I think one way I'd be excited for safety work to scale is for these scaling labs to really align scaling and alignment as like hand in hand. I think many people say these do align naturally because people want products that do what they intend them to do. And a product that is misaligned is not useful to anyone. But I think one has to turn over more stones to find out if these systems are going to be dangerous for all of humanity, rather than just have we tested it enough such that it's going to be useful for our users. And there are lots of questions about that. The sorts of things I'd be excited to be adopted into a culture of safety is thinking really carefully about how you deploy your models. I think OpenAI have thought a lot about how they deploy their models. They're all noticeably behind APIs, and they haven't released any
Right.
details of the model architecture for GPT-4. Other labs have different attitudes. You've mentioned Meta; they are very much on the open source track, and I think there'll be lots of other technical questions and philosophical questions about how these labs grow. And I'd really like the response to be to put safety at the core of everything. I mean, if we think about other professions like building buildings, like engineers who build buildings, safety is very much at the core of everything they do. Everything has
Right.
a 2x margin to make sure these buildings don't fall down, probably more than that. And I think it's not been the case in ML. The culture is very different. Obviously, it's coming from the Silicon Valley culture of move fast, break things, like deploy and test it. And I think as foundation models form more of a pillar in our like digital infrastructure, the same way buildings form our physical infrastructure, we're going to have to think differently about safety in that way. And I think this is the way that safety scales. I don't think there are separate initiatives to pour more money into. I think just a shout out. I think this is Anthropic's philosophy. I don't have an inside view on how well they're executing on this. People would disagree because ostensibly they are building large models and deploying them, but they don't have a safety team. And they would claim this is because safety is at the core of the projects they do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's an important call out, that there's this distinction between safety and capabilities, and safety and broader AI research is far from a hard one. Something like, concrete example, RLHF, or reinforcement learning from human feedback, both helped the model be more steerable, or more limited in its use cases in terms of misuse, but also also led to being a more helpful and valuable assistant. Now, I'm not saying that RLHF is the be all end all. It has a lot of flaws, but it was a concrete example of a safety initiative also leading to capabilities. And there's a lot of these gray areas, and I think you're right that there's all of these orgs. Even these headcounts are hard to say, because a lot of what they're doing is an interplay between what can the model do and how do we control it, and those things are tied quite closely.
Yeah, and I think the RLHF example is an interesting one. Not sure I have a salient point here, but there's something around ensuring we don't see alignment and capabilities as a trade-off. I think these have been presented as a trade-off before. And I suppose, yeah, you mentioned problems with RLHF. One is, that it kind of does what humans want, or learns to appease humans, which could lead to, if the model really wanted something different, people have conceived of the problem of deception. So doing what the humans want when it's being watched, but knowing that it wanted this other thing and that it's only appeasing humans. I think the bunch of technical problems you can dive into on our course to explain if and how that
I was
might
going to say there
arise.
are very not just theoretical, conceptual examples, but empirical examples of what Jamie just talked about in the course. And if I might even try and dig some of them up for the show links. But yeah, these are not just theoretical problems.
Sounds great. And I think the interesting thing I wanted to point to with RLHF is, I think recently people have been reporting ChatGPT feels like, or GPT-4 in particular, feels like it's been degrading in its performance. And I wonder, I think this points to a core challenge with defining what alignment is. One definition, I know we haven't talked about much about what the definition of alignment is, so I wanted to fill in a bit of that. One definition people use is systems do things that humans intend them to do, and don't do things humans don't intend. But I think this points to a tension between model ingenuity and breaking rules that we don't want models to break. And RLHF is good at making models conform to what humans would want, but people would say, I mean, it's too early to say if the performance degradation is true, has in fact happened, and definitely too early to say whether it was because of reinforcement learning from human feedback. But one potential challenge could be that we've squashed more of its creativity by making it conform to things humans want. So I think this is just one feeling I have about why the alignment problem is fluffy, hard to pin down, and therefore will be hard to solve. And I think governance will be very important for.
Well, with alignment, there's the alignment as you've defined it, which others use as well, which is around does what the operator wants, the human operator. But then there's the question of which human operator,
Yeah.
the person who built the model, the person who's actively prompting it now, some broader society of stakeholders who are affected by the model, and this is where, like you're saying, governance becomes very, very key. And this is why there's no world where technical research alone solves this problem, because there's a bunch of related things that just can't be solved without actually getting people's opinions, values, and stakeholders, together to figure this out.
Yeah. And in case anyone's waiting with bated breath for another definition of alignment, another people would say, another one that's thrown around is aligning systems with human values. And I think that really I think it's very much what you were saying. It's like
Right.
the first question is whose
Yeah.
values, which humans' values, and
Yeah.
at
Jamie's
the moment,
values, my
yeah,
values, somebody else's values.
yeah, and at the moment we've de facto made a decision here, which is the values of the sum total of everyone on the internet, plus fine tuned by the values of some probably mechanical Turk workers, maybe with some ethical guidelines given to them by
Yeah.
OpenAI,
Well.
and that's the RLHF step that I'm referring to there, where people will look at two outputs and decide which one's best. But I know that I would have a very different response to which output is best around a question. Don't want to necessarily get into it, but like a very like heated question. People have very different responses, not only people within one place like the US. I mean, we don't need to point to polarization there to know that
Right.
people respond differently. But if we want these systems to be globally beneficial, then maybe we want someone from every continent's values being in there. But I think that's just incoherent. And yeah, that will. I don't have the answers, but yeah, there's no solution to this currently.
Yep, 100%, 100%. And I won't even try and respond to that one and dig into it because I know that's a whole episode. So I'm gonna leave that grade for a future episode of how we think about the values that we're going to try and build into these systems. What are some concrete ways you think people listening to this show who will be often technical listeners or people who are quite familiar with the world of technology, how can they get involved and start to help to make sure that the future is safe and positive with these more advanced AI systems?
Yeah, absolutely. Seems important. Yeah, I guess there's, as you mentioned, mostly technical listeners here. I think having technical skills is the first hurdle to being able to help out with alignment. A lot of the work today, we've mentioned like safety teams at scaling labs or just working at scaling labs in general, is becoming increasingly empirical, and they're dealing with the largest models over, distributing these models over multiple GPUs, which I never had to do as a machine learning engineer, but I think requires additional skills. And yeah, the first hurdle is really having those skills. So one way to help is if you're commit to this, to continue to pursue those skills. If you already have them, brilliant. But then obviously the important next thing is to, I think, become well versed with what the problems are. I think possibly we've fallen victim to this in this episode, but like gesturing to problems like deception sounds like very science fiction. And I promise you, there are machine learning researchers thinking more closely about how this would actually emerge empirically. And I think that is very important. One, to make progress on the problem yourself. Two, to make sure this field is communicating positively and in a way that can't be dismissed as
Right, this empirical
yeah,
work around problems like deception that we think are critical to safety.
exactly. And other problems too, like well, I won't go into it, but yes, these are all on our course. So
Would you
maybe
say
this
maybe a course on a certain website? What's that website they should go to?
maybe you just Google AI safety and click the third result. You'll
Exactly,
find
yeah, it
it.
was up
The
there.
AI
So
Safety Fundamentals course. That's it.
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so getting yourself educated on what's going on and then maybe getting involved in that technical research seems like a pretty important way. Yeah, what else?
Yeah. So I suppose that's all things one can do for themselves. I think in terms of getting more involved, I think speaking to other people is still very helpful. One way is through our course, but also on our site, we point to local groups where you can meet other people. There's some online communities we point to there. There are many online communities around AI alignment. I would struggle to list them off now, and I think different ones have different appeals. So I will, make a reference to our directory there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I still think because this field is so new, there is just so much like empirical work that can be done. To if you have the expertise and like have read about it, it's very likely you'll have an idea that hasn't been tried, and just getting started seems really good. But yeah, I think otherwise, if you're in a position of I know working at a company that works on ML and you have colleagues, again, like first step, becoming better versed in the problems. So not just, not necessarily speaking to our listeners, but it has been a problem in the field. Like say things which seem, not tractable to other people. So speaking to colleagues about this can be really helpful too, both to like form your own views on what the real problems are, what the real challenges are going to be, but also I think like increasing this culture of safety in the machine learning community is really important. And
Right.
I
Like
wish there were.
if we're creating these really capable systems, just having it be a norm that safety and risks and downside protection is something we all consider, just like people do in cybersecurity or civil engineering, all these things seems like a big step forward.
Exactly. And I think this will be, something done by the individuals, who are speaking to their individual friends too. It's something that will proliferate from the grassroots, if you like. But yeah, I also wish there were more initiatives looking more top down on how to do this, and it's definitely something I'll be thinking about with our course. How we can best use it to achieve a culture of safety and help organizations use the latest methods to build the safest systems.
So you also spoke about a bunch of organizations out there doing good work.
Mm.
Are there, maybe just one more time, it'd be great to call out, like, who are these organizations and what are the ways you might be able to support them?
One place you can find all of them is our opportunities board on our
There you
website.
go. This website is the one way to figure out all the ways to get started. This is great.
Is what we're trying. Yeah, what we're trying to do with it. I'm sure there's many more things we
That's
could be doing.
awesome. That's awesome.
But if I may say, we'll link to it in the show notes.
I love it.
Thanks.
I love it.
Always wanted to do that, but but to call out some things. One thing we've not really talked about a lot is like if orgs going into model evaluations. So Apollo AI and the Alignment Research Center evals project are both often hiring, trying to find people who want to evaluate these biggest models and find bad behavior, essentially. There's those teams. More research oriented people, will want to look at Chai at UC Berkeley, David Kreuger's group in Cambridge. And I actually can't keep up with all of the labs now. We'll try and think of some more.
There's
and
lots
put
of them out
in
there, aren't there?
Yeah, they're growing. Definitely some in Germany, some more in the US.
There's a very good, I always confuse FLI and FHI, but one of those organizations has a directory specifically for academic labs and that are interested in kind of catastrophic and existential risk from AI. So I can link that in the show notes, and it's a great way to figure out a lab that resonates with what you want to work on.
That's great. Yeah, it sounds like FLI to me, and that reminds me that they currently have PhD fellowship applications open for 2024. So yeah, if you're looking for funding for a PhD to work on this, that's a great place to go. I'm sure those two projects are related. I think a broad way, if one doesn't have technical skills or doesn't want to switch career, donations can help. A small disclaimer. I was once funded by something called the Long-Term Future Fund, and I think that's one reason it feels important to me. Obviously, I would therefore endorse the work it does, but currently they have less money than they used to, and there are lots of people with projects that might help out. I've mentioned there are like very few initiatives in this space. I think there would be more initiatives if that project had more money. So yeah,
So this is the long-term future fund is where
That's
people
right.
should potentially donate to if they care about these causes.
Yeah, and we can provide a link, but they're currently calling for donations, which could cause more great things to happen in this space.
Jamie, any last comments, suggestions, or thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, I guess if you got to this point in the episode, thanks a lot for listening, and it's really cool that you're interested in what I think is going to be definitely the newest and possibly like amongst the biggest challenges that we'll face this century. And I think this field's very new and there's lots of ways into it, lots of work to be done. And yeah, I'd be really excited to help you get involved.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Jamie, so much for all the work that you do in the field, including these incredible courses that I've learned from, and these incredible ways to figure out the ecosystem that you've provided on the website. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners will too. Thank you so much, and we'll have you on the show another time for another fun topic, I'm sure.
Amazing. Thank you very much.